free Golden Eagles for War Thunder. Download the app in the description below. Hey guys, welcome back to War Thunder, and welcome to my favourite Spitfire in the game, the Mark 16. I've never talked about this, I don't know why, I've never gotten into the bracketing of which some of my favourite vehicles are. Most of you probably know I love Messerschmitts, but then again, I don't shy from flying Focke-Wulfs. I don't really have a preferred aircraft when it comes to a lineup or when it comes to a specific plane. I mean, yeah, I like BF-109s, and I probably will prefer the G10 or maybe a G2. K4 is also very nice. But then again, I don't shy from flying Focke-Wulfs out, you know. And when it comes down to, for example, duels on 1v1s, there are certain aircraft that I despise in air battles or even in ground forces, but they're a real joy to fly in a 1v1 environment. A good example is the Meteor F Mark III. I don't fly that thing out very often, but in a tournament 1v1, I absolutely adore it. So back to the Spitfires at hand, I remember my early days of the game. This is the first year and a half when the game was first released, and the first Spitfires I never enjoyed. The Mark 1A, the Mark 2A, the Mark 2B, I think that's how they level up. By the way, I've been doing some off-grid grinding. I've been doing a little bit of arcade matches in the British biplanes. I've spaded those. I've gotten through the Gladiator and the Sea Gladiator, and I do have the first Spitfire right now. And it's a plane that I'm starting to enjoy a lot more, now that I understand the game. But when I first got that Spitfire, I was kind of visualizing it as a plane that, you know, won the battle for Britain, but I couldn't get the results to work, and it was due to the old performance of the 7.7s. And this is one of the gripes for me in Spitfires. The plane as it is has great performance, really. It's kind of like one of the easiest planes to fly. It's brain dead, really. But its guns often let me down. And that's why I think I didn't enjoy Spitfires until the Mark 2B, which gets 20mm, albeit just 120 shots total, which is 60 per gun. It's not going to do a lot of damage. You have to be a bit trigger patient. And then you get the LF Mark 9 and the F Mark 9. And these Spitfires are often referred to as space fires, because what you do with them, you take off, you put them into a literally 20-degree climb, and you can go watch Netflix. And when you come back in probably less than 4.5 minutes, you're already at, 5 to 6k, and there's nothing else near you. And I think for a long time, when I was going through the German grind and I was doing the, back in the day, what we did was, personally, the way I was grinding is, I purchased this giant pack. It was called the Ultra Advanced Pack. I had all the kind of nooks and crannies of good premiums. But when I was flying these American planes, boom and zoomers, these vehicles that need altitude, like a P-51, and suddenly you're at altitude, especially on Hokkaido, and there's a Spitfire above you, and you just kind of, it's not a comfortable feeling. And I think, along with a lot of people, I didn't like Spitfires, because I felt like they were too easy to play, they were borderline overpowered. I think overpowered is a word that we should start removing from our vocabulary, but we still all use it. In a moment of heat and a little bit of annoyance, we will always just yell, bloody OP plane, instead of obviously focusing on what the weak spots are. And it wasn't until I started to realize what Focke-Wulfs did, their defensive flying skills. When you go from having somebody on your 6 to being on their 6 with a matter of seconds, throttle control and, most importantly, rolling became an aspect that I was very, very curious about. I started to kind of, level my knowledge. And I realized that all the Spitfires, with the exception of the one we're flying, this is literally the only plane not affected by this because it has clipped wings, is the roll rate. The roll rate on all Spitfires, especially at high speeds, is abysmal, and the rip speed is also very close with it. And with this connection, one of the best ways to get rid of a Spitfire that's above you, diving on you, and you're, let's say, in a BF-109, is quite as easy as diving away and then forcing a side, strong upward maneuver. If he follows, he will rip his wings off. Now, obviously, making somebody rip their wings off doesn't reward you any kills, doesn't give you an assist. It will give you a bit of satisfaction, sure, it will look great if you do it on a video, but I can understand how it can be a bit demotivating for some players, obviously wanting to get results, research points, and grind through, instead of just having a lovely match. So, when you look at Spitfires, the early ones, they're all turn fighters, primarily. Good climb rates, good turn radius, and that's all you're going to do. You're just going to be climbing up, you're going to be turn fighting everything. It's extremely simple. But as with all turn fighters in the game, they get boring after a while. I think as a player who starts to master these, and you start to understand what boom and zooming is and how energy fighting works, defensive, aggressive flying, you want something a bit more. And if you're looking for a plane that does everything a Spitfire does good, but does it a little bit better, this is the plane to do it with. Just to comment on this dive, we're exiting at 700 kilometers per hour in a 5.0 plane, and I have no problems with compression on roll rate. I can just roll out of the way, zero problems. Immediately re-engage an A7M1, which is an extremely powerful plane with a beautiful camouflage, I have to comment on that, and then just loop straight back down with 10 degrees on a split S, and I still retain 500 kilometers per hour on a beautiful head-on with an A6M5. As somebody who's flown all British planes, all the Spitfires, as somebody who's gotten through the entire German tech tree and prefers German over the British, this is the plane to go for. If I was right now transitioning from Tier 3 to Tier 4 German props, and I had to get myself a premium, I would look no further from the Clipwing, because it just is a disgustingly nice plane. And it's not because it's good, it's because it's nice to fly. You see, there's a difference between flying a plane that's just generally got massive power. Like, because if you're talking about performance and power, you could talk about P-47s. You know, under-tiered, amazing performance of 50 cals, almost too good to be true. And yet, they get an air spawn, you know? But all that together, a P-47 requires patience, requires slow climbing, and then a lot of boom and zooming, and it's a plane for old people, really. I mean, all you do is just dolphin up and down, and then if you're extremely good at the game, and if you're comfortable with throttle control, flaps, and air brakes that the P-47M that we mentioned here does have, I did a video on this early spring, then yeah, you can turn with them, but it's still going to fall down to skill. Flaps. Oh, the flaps on Spitfires are something you're going to have to learn. And it's a tough learning progress, but when you get it down, ooh, it can be deadly. The flaps on the Spitfires don't go, you know, the classic combat takeoff landing. No, they just go landing or nothing. So if you accidentally extend them mid a duel, what can happen is that, number one, you'll rip them off. If you don't rip them off, you'll just bleed a lot of your speed. You have to be very cautious with the way you deploy them. It's similar to the way yaks fly, and it's about timing when in the turn you're going to deploy them. And when you do learn these flaps, especially in 1v1 duels, in scenarios where you're fighting a plane that has a better turn rate, like the A6M5 that we just fought, the Co-Ryzen, great premium by the way, you are the superior plane, and it falls down solely to flap timing. But let's get into the meat of this video, because this is going to be the best part. The shortest, but probably the most satisfying for me to do, defensive flying. The higher the roll rate, the better defensive flying capabilities tends to be. And when it comes to the roll rate of the Spitfire, we're talking Focke-Wulf 190 levels. Right there, if my timing on the rudder was a little bit better, that plane could have been easily eliminated through a simple reversal. And yet we're about to attempt a 1 versus 3. I've got two teammates in the area, but I'm going to try to take the gist of the battle to my own accord. What I've got is a bit of a healthy tip for defensive flying, because I get a lot of questions about this, and I want to make a video on it properly, but since we're here in the heat of the moment, it's not about getting guns on target, defensive flying. No, it's about getting your camera on target. The biggest problem with defensive flying is when people don't have situational awareness on when players are, where they're coming from. Like, here I made a mistake. You know, I should not have taken that head-on in the slightest, but I was in a point where I was at the slowest turn radius, and it would have costed me my life. The trick about defensive flying is doing everything with your keyboard, which means at all times you have to have your W, ASD, your shift and control. Your C key is a huge assist here. And I do make a mistake. See, these jukes were perfect, but I just overroll. I overrolled that right there by about maybe 5 to 10 degrees. And if I was to just click the flaps a little bit, those landing flaps could have saved me right there. So a bit of a sorrow ending, but that A7M2 is now in a 1 versus 2 scenario on low speed with low altitude. And one of the biggest tips that I have to give you about defensive flying is, at all times, is your mindset. Your mindset should not be, I am prey, yet you are predator. That is what you're doing, because what you're doing is you're putting yourself in a disadvantageous position to make the enemy feel like they can get you. And this makes defensive flying an attractive option for me, because it almost reminds me of a game of cat and mice. It's this mind game that's behind every duel that you have. And through your own skill, coordination, and timing, you too can get shots like that. That was indeed the same Spitfire that we've just flown against the Japanese, and we were able to take him out using the exact same tactics that we used against the Japanese, flying a Russian medium bomber. Just to prove that anything really is possible if you put in the effort, and of course if you have a little bit of luck. And to make sure I get the maximum YouTube revenue today, I want to make sure this video is over 10 minutes long, so let's just yab along something unimportant. Update on the Green Doom will be happening probably tomorrow. What I can give you is some spoilers, so I'll give you 3 numbers. Level 10, 25 hours, 1,300,000 Silver Lions.